I declare the meeting of the City Council open. This meeting is being conducted remotely in accordance with the Local Government Elections Wales Act 2021 and the remote meeting protocol agreed by Cabinet, which will operate alongside the Council's standing orders to ensure that we continue to take democratic decisions in an open and transparent manner. I would remind members that this meeting is being live streamed to the public. Can I request that you all switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you are not speaking to ensure that no unnecessary background noise and to help with the audio and visual quality of the broadcast. The Council Standing Orders and Code of Conduct will apply at all times during this virtual meeting in the same way as ordinary meetings, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. Can I also remind members to ensure their chat function is switched on and to use the facility to indicate to me when they wish to speak on a particular item. Please do not speak until I invite you to do so, and remember to unmute your microphone and switch your camera on. For the benefit of everyone watching to the live stream, when I invite members to cast their vote on a particular item, they will do so electronically, using their voting facility in the chat function. The vote will automatically be counted and recorded onto the system, but individual votes are not identified on the screen, and the chat room poll is not available on the live stream for public viewing. However, I will announce the number of votes cast for and against and any abstention before I declare the result. As well as being broadcast live, a recorded version of this remote meeting will be uploaded onto the Council's website for public viewing as soon as possible. After the meeting, Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. The images and sound recording will be also used for training purposes within the Council. Move on to the first item, and that is apologies. I haven't received any apologies. We received no apologies. Are there any declarations of interest at this stage? Councillor Horton.
I'd like item 8, the non-domestic rate for my business.
Thank you. Noted. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Likewise, being a director on the Newport Credit Union. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got no announcements to make. The minutes from January the 24th, 2023 are before us. Are there any points of accuracy? Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Just two short amendments on page 12 of the minutes on the mayoral nomination. It says the Council nominated Trevor Watkins as Mayor. I'd like the word unanimously added to that. And on the same page, page 12 at the bottom, Presiding Member reminded colleagues that the former leader, Councillor D. Wilcox, had introduced open questions to the leader in 2016, reintroduced because questions to the leader were done previously.
Okay. Everybody okay with that? Right. I move the minutes as a true record. Is there a seconder? Councillor Pat Druitt. For all those in favour, please indicate by clicking on the voting application in the chat box. I will give all members a short time to cast their vote. I think that's unanimous. Okay. Approval of the minutes is duly carried. Item 3, appointments. Councillor Clark to introduce this item.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'll make it quick. You all have the list in front of you. It's been agreed that the John Frost appointment is withdrawn for the moment to get more clarity. So, Presiding Officer, I would like to move all the other appointments listed.
Is there a seconder to this?
Yes, Presiding Officer, I'm happy to second that.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Fairweather. Would all councillors please cast their vote by clicking on the appropriate box in the chat function? I will give all members a short time to vote to cast their vote of confirming the result. All those for, please. Any against? The appointments there are duly carried. Item 4 is police issues. I'm pleased to welcome Chief Superintendent Carl Williams, Local Policing Commander for Newport and Monmouthshire, to the meeting.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, a diolch am y gwahoddiad. Thank you all very much for the invitation. My name is Carl Williams. I took over as the Local Policing Commander, as you're aware, for the East Local Policing Area, which covers the Newport and Monmouthshire areas, back in late summer. I'm sure you'll join me in sending my thanks to Tom Harden, who was the previous commander. My apologies that I haven't been here in person myself since I took office. That's because of some competing demands and existing commitments. But I know you've seen my Deputy Superintendent Vicky Townsend, Chief Inspector Hannah Lawton, and I think Chief Inspector John Davis. There is a benefit of not having me here at times and having some of the other SMT who are specialists in different areas of the business throughout the policing area. But we've had a really busy but successful period across Newport, specifically with some superb successes around preventing criminality, bringing offenders to justice, and probably most importantly that preventing harm from our local communities and those within our communities. Some things I wanted to bring to your attention this evening, and of course I'll welcome some questions afterwards, is we've been working in the Lisweri area with some daily patrols and some youths identified there, and use of the local authority apprenticeship scheme in a really positive way, and my thanks to all of the officers that have been involved in that, both within Newport County Council and within Gwent Police. We've had some really positive news as well in the Llanwern area with 2 individuals who had some agreed extra support from us, and another where an RSL went to court to get an injunction with the power of arrest there in Orway. And we've also seen a recent incident that was well reported in Clearwell Court that I'm sure we'll get on to discussing with some increased police presence. And I think there was a meeting last night or the night before in Pentrapoint School to discuss some of those concerns with the local community. I know we've had a number of councillor walk-arounds, including Councillor Mudd and Councillor Clark recently in the Malpass area, which was great to see, and that is something open to any and all of you if you want to take advantage of that, to come out in the local communities with the local neighbourhood teams. You'd be very, very welcome to do so. In the Marshfield and Dufferin area, over the last 6 weeks, there's been a neighbourhood action week, which has culminated in what we've termed as Operation Absorb. That has taken place along the coastal road down in Peterstone and Marshfield with partners from National Resources Wales, Trading Standards, the DVLA and VOSA, where we stopped a number of vehicles, a number of tickets were issued, a prohibition issued by VOSA, and a vehicle seized for having no insurance, so some real positive outcomes there for us. And in the city centre, we've had a hugely improving picture in terms of bringing offenders to justice. With a positive outcome rate at the moment of 17.1%. We'd still like it to be better, of course, but some real positive outcomes there around people that are causing problems on the city centre. Not least, but working with intelligence gathering, our community support officers, linking in with some of the officers that you've provided as well, and some real notable successes around shoplifting that has been really a challenge for us over the past couple of months. We've had one individual, for example, dealt with 11 offences, 2 creeper burglaries, and that individual's on remand. One individual dealt with 9 offences, and remand was being sought this morning for that individual. Another individual for 6 offences, who's now on remand as well. Sousa Hussein was dealt with the 2 thefts and boots and was given 18 weeks in prison. And Perry Gerry was dealt with in court and is now in prison for 12 weeks. And we've had some real successes around community orders, rehabilitation orders and other orders to try and prevent further offending. But I think probably one of our biggest challenges, especially around that shoplifting picture, is that corporate responsibility. Not all retail premises in the area, and this isn't something that is a special to Newport, but not all retail premises help themselves around that security to deter thefts in all respects. As I said, a lot of work gone on right the way across the board in terms of overall crime. Overall crime we've seen a downward trend from August 22, where we saw around 1,900 crimes for the month across Newport County, down to around 1,400 crimes in February, and they've been decreasing month on month. And that is with a backdrop of bringing more offenders to justice and hopefully putting more people behind bars when necessary. And that is what I've got for you this evening. I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Right. Thank you very much, Superintendent. Leader, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Presiding Member, and welcome, Chief Superintendent. It's really good to see you here.
Thank you. Lovely to see you.
I'd like to firstly give my thanks on behalf of all elected members for the work that our neighbourhood policing teams are doing in terms of engaging with us and working in partnership with us at ward level. I think this is really productive and really helpful, and at this time is most welcome. And I'd also like to ask you to pass on my thanks to Chief Inspector Davis for the information that he sent out to us. All of Council colleagues found that briefing very helpful indeed. So once again, we all thank you for that. I do have a question, and you will recall some of the challenges we faced very early on when you came to Newport with regards to hate crime. A week ago, just over a week ago, some colleagues and I attended a vigil outside the Westgate Hotel to remember and pay tribute to the life of Brianna J, who was brutally murdered. And it was really very profoundly moving to stand there with representatives from all communities across Newport, but particularly our trans community, hear them pay tribute, but also hear people talk about their fears. And I include in that mothers talking about their children, members of our trans community themselves, and actually young people too. What assurances can you give us that all of our communities in Newport are safe?
Thank you very much, Leader. I think I'll wholly join you in saying that when these type of incidents occur, they are some of the most harrowing incidents. It is drawing on some a protected characteristic of those individuals that that is something innate within them and is something that is completely intolerable. And that is our stance within Gwent Police, to show how utterly intolerable those incidents are. We've got specialist hate crime support officers for when those types of incidents happen. We've also, to make sure we give that additional support, so not just the investigative support, and that stance around zero tolerance for those individuals, I think, is really important. Supporting, of course, those individuals to go through the court process if that's what they wish to do, and bringing offenders to justice in the strongest way that we possibly can. The reassurance piece that you mentioned with the neighbourhood policing teams is crucial to that, to show people, one, that we stand in solidarity, but secondly, that we won't tolerate it and we will take the strongest action where possible. And that commitment is right up to the Chiefs Council. We've seen the race action plan, the action plan against violence against women and girls that's recently been put on the strategic policing requirement within policing, a representative police force that acts appropriately and does not tolerate that type of behaviour is absolutely, I think, what is needed in all areas.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. We've had a few incidents of attempted burglary in the ward. It's also happening in Somerton. I've been in touch with the local policing team, obviously, first port, but he's away now until whenever. So it's just if we can have some further patrols in both Orway and Somerton, and the outskirts of the Ringland ward where we border. There's some issues going on there.
Thank you very much. Burglary is other than murder and rape, is something utterly appalling. in our communities. I'll absolutely make sure that's in place. The other reassurance I can give you, Councillor Harvey, is that despite somebody being off, there is always somebody to step in to be able to assist in doing that role. So 100%, yeah. We've seen a reduction in burglaries across the board in terms of residential burglaries, but one is too many.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rotley.
Chief Superintendent, good evening. On behalf of myself and my colleague, we represent the ward of Langstone, and I'd like to make you aware and ask you if you'll do us a favour. And through your association with the blue lights, can you ask them, as they're travelling along the A48 between the Calder roundabout and just beyond Hillcroft, we are faced with we're faced with a road that is potholed in certain areas. But I can imagine if you've got a police cyclist there, if you've got a car going at high speed, if you have an ambulance running along there, we don't ask your officers to. I mean, it's dangerous enough, the task that you undertake on our behalf. But to ask you to run on roads like that is not only treacherous to you. If you're in an ambulance, it's treacherous to those who are actually inside the ambulance. Can you make the wider team aware?
Councillor Rotley, I think, Councillor Rotley, well, I think it's very unfair to ask that question. No. You should be asking that question to the cabinet member for highways, not the police.
This has come up today. You're not going to do anything. It doesn't meet a criteria.
I've asked you,
safety.
Councillor Rotley,
no problem. Question's been asked.
Councillor Rotley, sit down, please. That's an unfair question to ask you. Councillor Cleverly.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. Good evening, Chief Superintendent. I'd like to raise the problem we have in Bettis, around Bettis in Bloom building. Since last October, we've had a certain group of young people going in there, vandalising the place, breaking windows in the greenhouse, and it only happened again this weekend. We've been in touch with our local CPOs, but if you could raise some patrols there and around the shopping centre with this it seems to be like a large group of teenagers congregating there, and in the park by Bettis Social Club as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. I am aware antisocial behaviour is an ongoing issue in the area. I know some youths have been identified. We've issued, we've done some home visit and letters issues. We've got a POP plan, a problem-solving plan in the area, for want of a better term. And obviously working with yourselves within Newport Council to try our best to drive that demand down. We've seen some positives coming from it, but absolutely we'll make sure we do some extra patrols there.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Reeks.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Good evening, Chief Superintendent.
Can I just say, Councillor Morris is on the same point rather than ask another question.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. Yeah, on exactly the same point, it's becoming a perennial problem. I understand there was a collision between a youngster on an electric bike on the road and a car. What are the implications for the driver, and what are the insurance implications for the youngster on the bike?
Thank you both very much. This is definitely not a problem that is, just in Newport. This is something that is national. Our stance, first of all, is really clear on this, in as much as electric bikes shouldn't be on the road unless they are vehicles that are deemed as roadworthy, so taxed, insured, etc. There are some cities you'll be aware of, for example, Bristol, being our nearest, that have I guess, a trial going on to see how that works, where they've got the appropriate lighting, etc. on them. So we are taking action wherever we see them. We've had a number of seizures over the last month, for example, and I can tell you that last week I was the firearms commander, the most senior person on as goal command for the force. And we had an incident involving an electric bike, and there's a clear strategy. I think Superintendent Townsend mentioned it last time. We've got some really clear advice from a National Police Chiefs Council in terms of action to take if the most serious violence occurs. There is always that balance, of course, with what action can we take that is proportionate to somebody being on them. I accept there can be a danger to road users and action needs to be taken. But likewise, unless they're committing serious crime, we won't take, we wouldn't hit them off the bike or anything like that. I know you may have seen videos online of different countries doing things like that. That is not our stance, because protection of people is really important to us, and these are often youths on there. That doesn't mean that we won't seize them when we can, and if there are really serious incidents on them, we will use tactics such as contact with those bikes if we deem that absolutely necessary to balance that proportionality. I hope that answers your question.
Right, I've got Councillor Whitehead. I am going in order, Councillor Whitehead, and you are next anyway.
Thank you, Presiding Chair. I was just clarifying, anybody can see my hand raised. Just an additional comment, Councillor Cleverley's really, in the better situation. I came home off holiday to a couple of videos I was sent of the kids or the teenagers trashing Bettis in Bloom, and obviously some expletives telling me that it's literally 30 yards, and it is, from the police control station there. Which, for us to try and have conversations with people ranting that, look, it's 30 yards away, where there's about 5 police cars outside that building. These kids are making a lot of noise. Nothing's happening. But to tag on to that as well, you're getting around 40, no doubt the same teenagers hanging around the shopping centre. We've had a few beatings of kids, namely one was an autistic child, which I found very distressing. And now it's crept into Mono Primary School there during the daytime when people and teachers are in the school, they're smashing windows, etc., etc. So for me, a few weeks ago, I did ask for a heightening of patrols around there, physical patrols on foot rather than in vehicles, if possible. I know I'm asking a lot, but it just does seem to be these kids seem more emboldened on a weekly basis, and they're up in the ante, it seems to me. And I can well imagine that the older generation in particular are becoming more intimidated than ever. And now this has been going on for quite a while now. I know it's circular. You do get the gangs of kids grow up, but this is another gang that's come up behind the previous gang. And so, I thought I would tag that onto my colleagues' comments there. I did speak to the PCSO about it today, and I'm hoping to put in some sort of an application with some sort of CCTV funding around the school area in particular, because that, for me, that is, particularly while the kids are in school, a safeguarding issue. But thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned, I'll pick that up. There is a POP plan in place. I'm aware the problem-solving plan in place for that. I'll have a look what target hardening needs to take place in that area as well to make things a little bit more difficult for them. In relation to the police cars outside, I can also have a little look at that to see what vehicles were there at what times and make sure that everybody, including our response officers, are aware of some of these issues. I'll make sure that's included in briefings locally.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're getting quite near the time that we've got 6 speakers, so can we make your questions fairly short, please? I got Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Evening, Chief Superintendent. First of all, I just want to quickly support the comments of the leader about the cooperative approach that your officers are taking. In Rochester West, we've had sort of historical, it's not a drugs hotspot by any means compared to some areas in Newport, but we've certainly had some historical issues with drugs. And the comments about the e-bikes as well, that's certainly an issue in our area. But what I've got to say is the PCSOs and the local neighbourhood police do work really closely with us, but they have regular meetings with us. We share regular surgeries. They will come out on walkabouts with us, and they're very, very visible in the community. It has made a difference. And then recently, well, this week, there was quite a high-profile arrest in Rochester West, which, again, when the residents see that something's actually happening, and it's visible, they're seeing that it's happening, they're seeing their reports being acted on, it does make a difference, and it just improves the local confidence. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
That's excellent. That's really good to hear. We're trying our best to kind of go down the route of, you said we did, to make it absolutely clear that if we're asking residents, local elected officials for intelligence, etc., that we then take some positive action and make sure that's publicised as well as we can. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Hurricane.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. Good evening, Chief Superintendent. Before Christmas, we had a very unpleasant incident in St Julian's where so-called bully dogs attacked two small dogs and killed them. Obviously, the local community were outraged, and this week somebody contacted me to give me a name and address of the people concerned, which I immediately passed on to Inspector Corley. Just take this opportunity this evening to thank the member of the public and to say that everybody knows where some sort of antisocial behaviour has happened. There's no incident where nobody knows the answer. And if they can inform the police, it'll get a much quicker result. And I'm hoping for a much quicker result now that they've got the names of the people who own these bullied. Thank you, Chief Superintendent.
Thank you very much. I could not agree more with your comments. Likewise, for bikes, I often say this in terms of electric bikes, off-road bikes. These vehicles, for want of a better term, are based in somebody's home somewhere. The next-door neighbour knows, someone in the street knows. Let us know. You can do that completely anonymously, and in no circumstances do we ever breach that confidence, and I think that is a critical part, the community helping us wherever they possibly can, and we will take the strongest action. I know the information that you mentioned specifically, we're trying our best to identify owners where we can around those and assess dogs' demeanours, etc. in those situations, please. But that message to the public of Newport is really, really crucial for us. So thank you very much.
Councillor Horton.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Good evening, Chief Inspector. It's not a question. I'm just echoing what Councillor Reynolds has said, and I'd like you to pass on the thanks for the Maindy ward for the work that Inspector Crawley has been doing with his team, with their increased presence within the ward, and the way they've been helping the residents with some of the issues that they've been having. So it's just feeding back to your guys the sort of great work that they are doing. It doesn't happen very often, the feedback, not the great work.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. I'll make sure that goes back.
Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Chief Superintendent Carl Williams, you mentioned Operation Absorb in Tredegar Park and Marshfield area. I wonder if it's possible for you to pass on some of the data to the local members, because we've done quite a few surgeries down there and nothing seems to have come to light in regards to the information. So I'd be grateful if you could forward that information to the members in Tredegar Park Ward and Marshfield for us.
100%, I can make sure that's done. No problem at all.
Thank you.
Councillor Mogford.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Can I just take you back, Chief Superintendent, to the questions asked by Councillor Reeks and Morris? I have an electric bike, and I'm wondering whether your answer was conflating legal electric bikes, which are allowed on the road, and electric scooters. Were you talking about the two, or specifically about electric scooters?
I was right. You're absolutely right. To be absolutely clear on that point, if you've got an electric bike that is one that needs you to, I presume you're talking about the ones where you need to pedal to get them going, they're absolutely legal to have. So if they're pedal assisted, if they're ones that don't require any input other than, pressing go or turning an engine on, regardless of whether that's an electric engine, then they are illegal, unless, of course, they're the roadworthy ones, and very few of those do exist.
the bikes you talk about that don't need assist, pure electric, are often used by Deliveroo and the likes. I do see them going around and they reach amazing speed, so they're chipped as well. My bike will do 15.8 miles an hour legally, but you can double that by manipulating the bike.
We will take the same action regardless of who's using them.
Okay, then. Councillor Petroni.
Chief Superintendent, thank you. I've asked this question of your colleagues before, but I am keen to keep raising it, is the awful practice of cuckooing, particularly used by criminal drug gangs, taking advantage of very vulnerable people, either coercively or befriending them, which is even worse. They think they're their friends as they take over their house. What work are you doing with RSLs, Newport City Homes of that sort, and the Council to target to be aware of individuals who are potentially vulnerable to such despicable behaviour and to protect them from these criminal gangs? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it is, I completely agree, it is a really awful situation where we have cuckoo. And we've had some really positive outcomes across Gwent in terms, not just in the east and in Newport area around cuckooing. And we often see that these are very, very vulnerable individuals and people that you know, absolutely miss and not appropriately dealt with by criminal gangs really within our community. So yes, we try and do a lot around education of vulnerable people wherever they're identified. We take the strongest action we can when we've got intelligence linked to that. We've had one, for example, we worked in Broadmead Park with an RSL recently and been able to identify premises that might be subject to antisocial behaviour and cuckooing that you mentioned, and those joint visits have been done. So we make sure that we work with all appropriate agencies, not only you know, people such as RSLs, but the third sector to be able to provide support as well for those that are vulnerable within our communities.
Okay, I think there's no more questions from any members, so can I thank you, Superintendent, for answering the questions of the members, and good evening. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we move on now to item 5, which is the Capital Strategy and Treasury Management Strategy. The leader to present this report.
Thank you. The next report on our agenda is the Capital and Treasury Management Strategy for 2023-24. Now, colleagues, this is an annual report focusing on the Council's capital expenditure plans, the financial impact of these in terms of borrowing, and our investment strategy for the year. It's important to note that although Cabinet have approved the detailed capital programme, it is full Council that ultimately approves the borrowing limits and prudential indicators contained within the report. It's also important to note that the Governance and Audit Committee have considered the report in their most recent meeting and have provided comments. In this case, their comments simply endorse the proposed strategies with no concerns raised. So in terms of the Capital and Treasury Management Strategy, there are several points to draw Council's attention to. The first is that we are entering a new capital programme window, with the current programme ending in March of this year, and a new 5-year programme taking effect from April. In the past, the programme has been reviewed once every 5 years. However, our proposal is to move to a rolling approach to capital programme management, meaning that the overall programme and borrowing affordability will be reviewed on an annual basis. This change will introduce more flexibility in managing our programme and is accompanied by strengthened governance arrangements, which are detailed in the report. Because of the extremely challenging financial context that we're working within, the proposed programme contains only ongoing and previously approved schemes, which are being carried forwards from the existing programme, and annual sums which include activities such as annual asset maintenance and fleet renewal. Because of the affordability challenges, there is no new borrowing headroom included in the strategy. meaning that capital headroom is limited. As a result, every opportunity will need to be taken to boost the headroom via one-off sources so that we can continue to respond to emerging pressures as and when they arise. It's especially important for Council to note that although there is no new borrowing included in this programme, previously approved borrowing will be incurred over the next few years, and this will increase the overall capital financing requirement and the Council's level of debt. The borrowing limits proposed in the report, which we're required to approve today, take account of this. In addition, the revenue consequence of additional borrowing is already budgeted for, following a budget investment made in 2021-22. It is vital that our proposed strategy is affordable, prudent and sustainable. The fact that the revenue budget required to pay capital financing costs confirms that the strategy is affordable. Prudence is achieved by ensuring that the level of capital expenditure being incurred is proportionate in the context of the overall budget, and that the recommended borrowing limits align with the broader capital expenditure plans. Sustainability is achieved by ensuring that our long-term commitment to incur capital financing costs is reflected within the medium-term financial plan, and the necessary revenue funding is in place for the duration of the financial commitment. In terms of Treasury management, the report details the Council's approach to borrowing and investing. It confirms that we will still pursue an internal borrowing strategy by using available cash resources to defer external borrowing for as long as possible, and will only undertake borrowing in advance of need where there is a clear financial rationale for doing so. For investing, the Council will continue to prioritise security, liquidity and yield in that order, and will strike an appropriate balance between risk and return. A minimum investment balance of £10 million is required, and longer-term investments, often with a higher return, will continue to be explored. It is important that we pay close attention to the Head of Finance commentary within the covering report, which directly addresses the question of affordability, prudence and sustainability, and confirms that the proposed strategy and programme meet all of these criteria. On that basis, we as a Council are asked to approve the capital strategy for 23-24 and the borrowing limits needed to deliver the proposed programme. We're also asked to approve the Treasury management strategy and the prudential indicators included within it, the investment strategy and the MRP policy for 2023-24. We are also asked to note the increasing level of debt and its impact, the Head of Finance's recommendations on borrowing, the comments regarding annual sums and prioritisation, and of course the feedback from Governance and Audit Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Is there a seconder, please? Thank you. Any comments on the proposal? Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I very much welcome the new strategic plan, particularly as we're adopting a sensible approach of annual review given the current difficult financial context. However, that's not to say that as a Labour administration we're not ambitious, and we intend to deliver on our manifesto commitments to the residents of Newport. And of course, this will also be affordable and prudent. And as Cabinet Member for Education, I am excited to see our plans for school improvement will continue to be delivered. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak on this report? Right. Would all councillors please cast their votes now for or against? Sorry? Oh, sorry. Well, I thought the leader said both. Sorry? Right, okay then. So, four. Sorry. I apologise for that. Any against? That's carried. Right, we're coming on to item 6. Just before I ask the leader to introduce this report, I would just like to say that I've been here for nearly 40 years. Some would say that's too long, and I have never seen a more challenging budget than this. My thanks as presiding officer go to all involved in this difficult process, be it the Cabinet, officers, scrutiny committees, Fairness Commission and residents. Also, the budget can be a very emotive subject, but I will expect members to behave in a responsible and respectful manner to each other. Leader, please introduce the report.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Colleagues, we have before us the Council Tax Report for 2023-24. It's an integral part of the Council's budget setting processes and follows the detailed proposals that the Cabinet agreed when we discussed our budget in our February meeting, during which we recommended an 8.5% increase in council tax. Before we discuss the council tax level that is being recommended to the Council today, I would like to turn our attention to the budget itself. It is safe to say that this particular process has been one of the most challenging in recent times. High levels of inflation, which are impacting residents and businesses alike, are also impacting significantly on this Council's finances. This is evident in terms of pay awards and energy costs, as well as the payments we make to our service providers. Coupled with a significant increase in demand for services, particularly in certain service areas, it led to a stark budget position and a significant gap between projected costs and funding, which needed to be addressed. Addressing that budget gap and achieving a balanced budget has been done in a number of ways, including additional funding from Welsh Government, which we're most appreciative of, savings across a range of services, and the recommended council tax increase. Although savings have been required to balance the budget, we have tried to minimise the impact upon services as much as possible, and have also been able to invest significantly in a number of our services. These vital investments were set out in our February Cabinet meeting, taking account of the feedback received from the public consultation. The key priorities, as highlighted within the report, that we'll see significant investment as we continue to recover from the last 2 years, include the following. Including the additional funding outlined during the recent Cabinet meeting, we're committed to a total of £9 million towards the pressures being faced by schools in 2023-24. Now, this funding will comprise mainly recurring funding, supplemented by some targeted one-off use of reserves. £13.9 million of investment in social care, which includes funding to pay care workers the real living wage from April 2023, additional provision to cover the risk of higher ongoing costs in the sector, and the significant increased demands for both children's and adult services. £3.6 million of investment in homelessness provision to ensure the Welsh Government directive that no rough sleepers should be left out on our streets. £1.7 million to make good the shortfall in the NJC pay award for 2022-23. Our public sector workers here in Newport are the unsung heroes, and we've made this commitment to them. And if we had more resources available to us, then certainly we would want to pay more. because they have kept Newport going, and each and every one of them should be acknowledged for the work that they have done and the contribution that they have made on behalf of the citizens of this city over the past 2.5 years. Now, a number of the investments, coupled with the withdrawal of certain savings that were consulted on, demonstrated that we have listened to the views of Newport residents, and we are doing the most that we can to support the most vulnerable citizens of our city. I'd like now, Presiding Member, to turn our attention to the recommended council tax increase for 2023-24. As I announced at the February Cabinet meeting, we have recommended an 8.5% increase, which is lower than the figure consulted upon. I made clear our intention to listen to the views of Newport residents, and the reduced increase demonstrates this. Whilst we understand that an increase of this size will be challenging for residents, at a time when costs of other household bills are increasing, the Council is facing the same cost pressures, coupled with a comparatively low rate of council tax to other Welsh local authorities. Now, before a decision is made on the level of council tax that is being proposed today, I do feel that it would be helpful to outline the following points. The focus is often on the percentage increase, and this can be used as a means of comparing the relative increases across other areas. I understand this, but it is the monetary values that are more relevant. In this respect, Newport continues to have one of the lowest council tax rates in Wales and the UK, and the monetary values our percentage increase generates are less than the value of an equivalent percentage increase in nearly all the other councils in Wales. And to explain that in detail, for the monetary value our 8.5% generates, which is £2.08 a week for Band D property, almost 2/3 of Welsh councils would need to increase council tax by 7.5% and less to achieve the same monetary increase. Most properties in Newport are bands A to C, and an 8.5% increase will increase weekly bills by £1.39, £1.62 and £1.85 respectively. In cash terms, these are relatively modest increases, but the total monetary value it generates is needed for the budget, and it's needed to preserve our most important services. For over a decade, our position has been consistent as we remain the second or third of the lowest council tax levels in Wales. Even with an 8.5% increase, this position is unlikely to change. Whilst we have seen and continue to see a number of financial pressures over the medium term, I am pleased that we've managed to respond to the concerns raised by our residents and reduce the council tax increases accordingly. I'm also pleased that despite challenges faced, we've been able to find a way through this process and balance this year's budget without the need for a general use of reserves. Now, some may question the decision not to use more of our reserves, but we're clear that using reserves would only store up problems for future years. Whilst the decisions taken in relation to savings have not been easy, balancing the budget without delving deeply into our reserves has been the responsible thing to do. This will stand us in better stead going forward and put us in a more sustainable footing for the medium term. The detailed recommendations are outlined in the report itself. However, in summary, Council is asked to note the extensive consultation exercise that has been completed and considered by Cabinet when finalising the detailed budget, to note the Head of Finance's recommendations regarding the minimum general fund balance and the robustness of the overall budget, to consider and approve a council tax increase for Newport City Council of 8.5%, a Band D tax rate of £1,380.13, and the overall revenue budget shown in Appendix 1. In doing so, to approve the formal council tax resolution which incorporates the Police and Crime Commissioner for Gwent and Community Council precepts, and this is detailed in Appendix 3. As well as this, Council is asked to note the medium-term financial plan and the financial context, note Cabinet's approval of the plan, and the fact that this will be subject to ongoing review, and note and approve the Council's reserve strategy and transformation fund protocol. To conclude, colleagues, this has been an incredibly difficult process this year. I'd really like to place on record my thanks to my Cabinet colleagues, to everybody that's contributed to the consultation, and to our officers who have worked tirelessly to ensure that we are able to propose the balanced budget and council tax recommendation that is being presented today. I believe, given the circumstances, that this is a fair budget, a sustainable budget, and a responsible budget, where we have, within the challenging context, prioritised the most vulnerable. I commend the budget and the council tax required and ask that Council support and approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Is there a seconder?
Can I second, and can I please reserve my right to speak?
Are there any comments on the proposal? Councillor Morris?
Mr. Presiding Member, I'd like to propose an amendment to the resolution, if I may. You have a copy in front of you. I've given to you.
I am.
My amendment is to refer the budget back to the Cabinet for reconsideration on the basis of the following suggestions. To invest a further £160,000 in the Environment and Public Protection Service with the suggestion of deleting the proposals to move the bin collection to 3 weekly. And it is appreciated the Cabinet will ultimately agree how to utilise this investment, but we ask that it be considered for be used for the 3 weekly bin waste collection, to take it back to remain as 2. And also that the Cabinet looks again at the 8.5% increase and to reduce it to a more acceptable level.
Is there a seconder?
Thank you, Mr. President. Member, can I second the proposal and reserve my right to speak at the end, please?
Right. Anybody else want to speak on the Leader?
Thank you, Presiding Member. Could you possibly read out the proposed amendment? Yeah. We couldn't hear it properly, so to get clarity on that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Well, if this happens in the future, I think if anyone wants to bring an amendment, it ought to be printed out and everybody has a copy of it, to be perfectly honest, but I will read it out. We haven't got enough copies. We haven't got enough copies, so I'll read it out anyway.
Point of clarification, Mr. Presiding Member, we did ask the legal officer whether that was required, and we were told no.
We did ask.
Right. Okay, but in future, I'm just saying it'd be easier to do that. What I am proposing is an amendment to the motion moved by the Leader as set out in the budget report. The amendment is to refer the budget back to Cabinet for reconsideration on the basis of the following suggestions. To invest a further £160,000 in the Environment and Public Protection Service with the suggestion of deleting the saving proposal to move to a 3-weekly residual and garden waste collections. It is appreciated that Cabinet will ultimately agree how to utilise this investment, but we ask that it be considered for the 3-weekly waste collection. To reduce the council tax increase from 8.5 currently proposed to a more acceptable level, to keep the budget in balance after the cost of these by utilising reserves to keep this to keep the budget in balance after the cost of these by utilising reserves. To do this for the 2023 to 2024 Cabinet will need to identify the reserves. Sorry.
If I could, Mr. Presiding Officer, where's the figures? How is this going to be balanced? We have to put a balanced budget by law. So where are the figures from the reserves that's going to balance it, please?
Well, it's not for me to say, but I would assume that they want to take it out of the capital. No, so let's see who wants to speak now. Anyone who wants to speak on the amendment? Councillor Petroni. Sorry? I thought you did speak on it, sorry. Sorry, all right then. You moved the amendment, right? And I thought that, and you want to speak now for 3 minutes then on the amendment. Right, okay.
Can I start off by saying that we really, really appreciate the situation this council is in. We're not playing games. We appreciate, I've been here a long time, I've never seen anything like this. We are in dark, dark times. But at the end of the day, we're all here as councillors. I'm a socialist, I'm proud of that. The people around me are different. I've never forgotten that. People around me are different, people over there are different, but we all care about the people out there we represent. And people out there are hurting at the moment, and we appreciate the position the council is in. I may have to crave your indulgence for a little bit more than the 3 minutes, because there are two separate issues here. First of all, if we talk about the 3 weekly bin collection, right? We accept it's got to come. We accept that's the future. It's got to come. But Newport is not ready yet for a 3 weekly bin collection. The area that we represent in Lisweri, it is the biggest problem that we get. I've taken the liberty of driving around the town. Alway, Ringland, Bettis, Dufferin, Pill, everywhere. Our city, it doesn't give a good impression to people coming in. People are struggling to understand the current system. They can't cope with the system that we have. Extending it to a third week, it's going to wreak havoc, and we're going to reap the whirlwind of that. They're not ready for it. Fine when we have things in place. Like, why has my next-door neighbour got the same size bin as I have? I'm a single man. She's got 4 kids. We've both got the same size bin. What could possibly go wrong? Smaller bins, fewer collections, and reduced access to the tip. We need to think this through and get things in place before we do that. The city is not good for visitors that come in along our main roads. It can only get worse. When we're in the position that we can cope with all the overflow that's going to come from the bins, fine, but we're not ready yet. I'm not saying put it off forever. I'm saying delay it until we've got the right things in place to clear up our mess. But coming to the main issue, the budget itself. It may seem small figures that we're talking about. People out there are hurting. If you're a good ward councillor, you're out and amongst your people, you know people are hurting. More so than ever before. I'm glad you find this quite amusing. The church I go to, people collect food these days to bring for other people. The kids, the school I'm a governor of, the kids bring in food to make sure other kids have a meal at the end of every day. We're in ridiculous situations. Pennies make a difference. Pennies make a huge difference to people. They're just about to have their electric bill going up £69 a month. Every penny makes a difference. For those of you who watch, have a look at the last cabinet meeting. In particular, look at 1 hour, 15 minutes into that cabinet meeting. And you will see the lecture that those of us sat up here to watch.
What's the point of order?
3 minutes.
Yeah, well, we're just waiting now to this. 3 minutes is up. You can, Councillor Morris, you've got the right to come back at the end of the meeting, so at the end of the amendment, so I suggest then that's when you raise those issues. Okay? Anyone else wants to speak on the amendment? Councillor Petroni.
Thank you. Chair, and I think Councillor Morris was about to refer to my lecture, which was about sound public finance, which they clearly did not listen to. So I've been involved with my cabinet colleagues, with the leader, with this group. Every member of this group challenged the cabinet. Every cabinet member was challenged by the leader to go back, check with officers, recheck, double check. We've had tough questions from all these group colleagues, every individual, because they know how dark it is out there. They hear the same concerns you have as well. But it gets darker if we don't balance the budget, if we don't pass a budget. And by kicking the can down the road or getting the credit card out, it's not the answer. I'm surprised the Conservative group support that. Used to be sound public finance. You won't? Oh, good. Because I didn't hear, I just heard reconsider council tax. I didn't hear how much lower. I presume lower. Did you say lower or higher? I didn't hear a particular figure.
Can we actually having talking back and forth there, please? No, please.
I'm talking to them behind you.
Councillor Petroni's... Look, stop, please. No.
I wish I was as talented.
Councillor
I wish I was talented.
Councillor Petroni's on his feet, please.
Well, sort of on my feet, Chair. Balancing this, it's a balancing act, weighing up council tax with the pressures that people are facing, with the services they need, with all the other factors of what's coming down the line next year and the year after that. And if we're going to use reserves, which I think I heard Councillor Morris say, of 160,000, I don't know the figure for what they reduce council tax by. I didn't hear that figure, but please clarify it. You are using our internal borrowing mechanism. And you've just heard the capital strategy articulated by the leader, which was we expect more borrowing. If we use reserves, we're reducing our capacity to internally borrow, which means we have to externally borrow and pay more interest on that borrowing. So you're increasing...
Can you wind up now? You're up to your 3 minutes, okay?
Now?
Yes, please, yes.
Increasing our borrowing, we can't afford it.
Thank you. I got Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Presiding Member. As a clarification, first of all, I think, Councillor Baccioni just touched on it. All I heard in that amendment was extra investment, cuts in the proposal for the 3 weekly bin collection, which obviously costs more money, and use of reserves. So I haven't heard anything in that amendment that explains where the extra funding is going to come from to cover either the extra investment that's being asked for, or the cut in council tax, or the reduction in the bin collections. So I just don't understand where that's coming from. Based on what was also said during the proposal of that amendment, I don't think anybody over this side needs lectures on how people are hurting. We all know how people are hurting. We live with these people every single day. We know damn well how much they're hurting, and we know why they're hurting as well. It's got nothing to do with the Labour Council. In terms of are people of Newport ready for bins to be collected once every 3 weeks, I think saying Newport's not ready is doing a massive underservice to the people of Newport. The people of Newport are ready. A lot of people in Newport that I speak to actually want this. They know that most councils have gone this way already, and they know there's a climate emergency, and they know that this is what needs to be done. And yeah, there's going to be a few people that object to it, but a lot of people not only are ready for it, they want it. But in terms of the amendment, I've got no idea where that extra money is coming from. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, President Officer. Only comments from me, really. I mean, these things, they always tend to end in shouting matches, and I don't think it does anyone any good. I think from early days, I got it that you're supposed to be the voice of the ward you represent. So you should carry the message of what you hear within your wards. And whether people in council like that or they don't, it's neither near or there. You're there to convey the message. And sometimes that's what we do. For me, regarding the weekly bin collections, it is a scary proposal because you've got groups like ours, Pride and Bettis, Pride and Pill, and there's many fabulous groups across Newport currently. We're collecting bags in the hundreds now of rubbish. And the fear is, I suppose, is the spike that will, no doubt, happen when this goes down to 3 weekly. And then there'll be the cost of dealing with this extra fly tipping. What will that be? We can only guess, but it won't come cheaply. And I think maybe when you balance that against the saving of going to 3 weekly, it may well be the answer in itself. But we can't see into the future. This is like we'll have to sit and wait to see what the impact of this is. We are brilliant in Newport. I mean, the figures are there. We're great recyclers, and like I say, the stats speak for themselves. But it is a worry that's being spoken a lot about in my ward. So, and I think to convey that message, we shouldn't be damned for it. We are entitled to carry the message of the people that put us in this position. So it's not a case of we shouldn't be throwing rotten tomatoes at the council, because it must be an absolute nightmare sitting there, going through figures, trying to please everybody. I mean, the Oaklands thing was fantastic. There was a lot of worry about that, in particular on Bettis, and I think removing that, the threat of what was going to happen there, is great. So yeah, so I'm not going to shout and spout where I know the council is faced with a difficult job, but it's a difficult job we all put ourselves forward for, and sometimes difficult decisions have to be made. And again, I mean, you see people laughing there. Whatever you say, Councillor Morris has been in this chamber for a very long time, and whatever he is, he's a very passionate ward councillor, lest we forget. So here we are, and I don't know where we move from this. But Councillor Petruni also makes valid points. Likewise, Councillor Reynolds. Money, where's it coming from? If we take it from there, where are we going to replace it? So I know this is a difficult task, but little things, in my ward in particular, it was the original 9.5, it's now down to 8.5, the council tax. And the... Councillor White, the 3 minutes are up. Yeah, thank you. But okay. that was my only point, really. We are going to be impacted, whatever way we look at it. And you know, like I say, I acknowledge it's a difficult job. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. Again, there's no figure, so I don't know what the figure's going to be. On the other side of that, nobody was laughing at your amendment. Nobody finds it funny. And I can guarantee you we've all lost sleep over this. Every single cabinet member, every single group member has lost sleep. In what planet do you think it was a good idea if we were to cut something like Oaklands? Untouchables. You'd never go down that way. But to keep Oaklands open, we've gone to 3 weekly bins. Something has to pay for it. You cannot borrow your way through life. You can't. It's a given. As for food parcels and people going to the church, and yep, that's lovely and it's brilliant. Me and my colleagues, every Friday, spend our evenings driving around Newport, delivering food parcels to people who cannot afford to pay the bills. This council tax going up will also increase the council tax reduction scheme. So for those who were £1 under the breadline, they could very well now be that £1 where they can get a council tax reduction. So inevitably it will help. No one's here to throw stones, no one's here to call names or point fingers or laugh or take the mick. It's been a very difficult consultation with the public. They've made their feelings clear. We've made our feelings clear. Social services, education are untouchable. And it's got to be paid from somewhere. And if that means we all got to recycle that little bit more, well, suck it up. That's what we've got to do. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey. Ended on a good note there. Councillor Sterry.
Thank you. I'll start on the 3-week bin collections. So Newport's already known as the fly tipping capital of Wales. We see it in my ward daily, on a daily basis. The fly tipping is horrendous, and by moving it to 3 weekly bin collections, it's only going to get worse. As for the 8.5% increase in the council tax, I believe this is the wrong time. At the moment, we all agree that we're going through a cost of living crisis, and I believe this is the wrong time that we should be penalising the residents with such a huge increase. Thank you.
Councillor Howells.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. We are in the middle of a cost of living crisis. Colleagues have alluded to it today. The worst this country has seen in a generation, I would say.
No, the mover of the amendment will be speaking at the end.
Sorry, lost my sort of place. Fuel utility prices are through the roof, as we know. Inflation's hanging around 10%. Food bills, much, much more. This budget has been a choice by the Cabinet, I have to say. 4 years out from the next election, a choice is to hit residents of Newport in the pocket at such a difficult time for our poorest and most vulnerable. We're in the middle of a war in Europe, and the next 12 months and how they play out is critical for all of us going forward. Newport residents won't forget the choice this Cabinet has made. This Cabinet blames the Conservatives in Westminster. They've had it in their gift to really help the people we serve. Here's an example, and here's the figures, which my colleagues have asked for when it's down to them to find. Earlier on in the year, we had an underspend from 21-22, £7.8 million. The Cabinet said, let's put that money aside for a rainy day to help people in the middle of a cost of living crisis. I thought, great idea. Yet, in the Cabinet meeting in February, they decided to boost the coffers instead, put that money into the capital, give themselves some headroom for vanity projects, instead of using that money to help residents with cost of living pressures, as they indicated they would. That money, used to fund the entirety of the deficit, would have resulted in a zero increase in council tax. I'm not advocating that that's the right approach, but using £2 million of that money would bring a council tax increase at 5.68% and fund the 3 weekly bin collections. Using 3% of the half of the money would reduce the council tax by 6%. There are options. That money instead was put into coffers. I understand the pressures of climate to reduce our waste and the need to increase our recycling for future generations. In fact, Newport's already pretty good at it, as I understand. We need to take the opportunity to work with our communities and businesses to build some resilience, facilitate proper engagement and implement strategies that don't move the problem from the bin lorry to the country road and the large estates dumping sites. It needs a 3-year strategy of change management, properly thought out and planned, rather than a knee-jerk reaction to this budget. I therefore second this motion, and I ask Cabinet to go back and reconsider this budget in light of the figures that I've given and aim to reduce council tax to around 5.68% by finding £2 million of capital reserves to fund that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas. No, he seconded the motion with the right to speak, to come back. It's Councillor Morris that can come back at the end.
Okay. Just a quick point. Councillor Morris actually, although he didn't give us a figure on where he proposed this money coming from or how much or for how long or for anything else, what he did actually mention was the £69 a month by which citizens in the UK on average are going to be cut from their, adding to the cost of living problem. Now, I'd just like to mention that what we're proposing in terms of an increase in council tax in no way will come anything close to that, except possibly for the very largest houses, and I don't think actually even they will be hit by that much a month. And so, where is actually that money going to? Who is getting the benefit of that £69 every month? I would suggest it's the friends of the government in Westminster, because the energy companies have made phenomenal, absolutely record-breaking profits. It would actually be nice to see some of that redistributed by your rich mates trickling down to people.
Councillor Thomas,
So,
Councillor Thomas, can you speak through the chair, please?
I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon, Presiding Officer. And I'm sure Councillor Howes didn't mean to mislead anybody here when he spoke. But I'm absolutely sure he perfectly well understands the difference between capital revenue and capital and revenue funding. Clearly, this budget is about our revenue funding.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Alioami.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. I just hope my link doesn't drop out while I'm speaking. It did happen a lot this morning. I have to be doing this meeting online as I am grounded at the moment because of COVID. Can I just say, I like to speak against the amendment and point out, colleagues, while I don't doubt really the passion of the movers for, trying to cut the bills and help during this cost of living crisis, I do applaud all that, of course. But I think it goes against the standing orders because, especially the second part, it is council that sets the council tax rate and not the cabinet. The cabinet only recommended a figure. So the amendment speaks about reference back to the cabinet. Well, in actual fact, the amendment could have been that the Councillor Morris could have come with a figure that we can consider, debate, and then vote on. So I believe, and I think we can ask the monitoring officer to adjudicate on that this is contrary to standing orders. The other thing is we need to set a balanced budget, and I believe this is now the right time, almost the latest time for setting a balanced budget. So, whatever we do, we have to finalise today as a balanced budget for the council. And in saying that, I have to really commend all the work that has been done. I really think this has been a horrible budget. You all know, colleagues, whatever your political colour is, we've had the presentation, we've seen the figures, and I think to arrive at this moment in time with a balanced budget, safeguarding some of the things that we debated in scrutiny, and we asked for a reference back, and we asked for a rethink, and I think they've been delivered in quite a few of the cases. So I think looking at it all together, it is a fair budget. It is not what we want, but it is a fair budget given the financial circumstances we found ourselves. We're all short of money. We know the problem with austerity. We had 1 year of austerity last year, but this year we do not have that holiday from austerity. We had to save money.
Councillor Ali, your 3 minutes are up.
Yes, I will just finish. For the reason I've outlined, I think this amendment should fall. But I believe the second part of it is not constitutional. Mr. Presiding Officer, thank you.
I think what they were referring to, and it's for up to them to say, but I think what they were referring it back to Cabinet for reconsideration, and then the recommendation from Cabinet would come to the Council to make that decision. But that's the way it is. That's the way I see that.
Yes, but can you clarify then? Do we have time for that to happen?
Well, I don't think we would have time for that. All I'm saying is that's what I've been informed it is. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Very much with the rules, as the motion writes, it's ambiguous, not very clear, and what we deem as reasonable is what's presented to here today. It's a very hard decision to come up with, but we have set a fair budget as already stipulated on here, as much as we can, listening to everyone that we can. A colleague has mentioned that the Council has a gift to provide, but so does the UK Government. They have a gift also to change the way of giving more benefits to councils, to communities, to help with the energy costs, same as the members of the public. So it might be in the gift of the Council to do certain things. It's a gift of the UK Government to also do others. And just to pinpoint that the people, with the rises will more likely receive benefits and receive help to be able to cover those costs. And that is something that hasn't been highlighted yet. And another thing is we are still one of the basically lowest council tax charged councils for properties in the region. Some are £200, £400 a year more for residents in the local area alone. So it's just to pinpoint those. But I will be voting against this amendment for said reasons. Too ambiguous, and it doesn't really help in the situation because it does lead to potential extra charges, especially with the fly tipping, with the 3-bin weekly collections. If we don't meet certain standards by Welsh Government, we will have financial implications. So we have to abide, as much as we can by that and not affect our residents at that cost later down the line. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Hughes? Oh, okay. No other speakers? Right, Councillor Morris? Oh, sorry, it's Councillor Forsey, sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Presiding Officer. What kind of abdication of responsibility is this amendment? This is just kicking the can down the road and wasting money. The savings for the 3 weekly bin collections are £320,000 per year, every year. And if we don't increase our recycling rates, we're looking to find something like £500,000 per year, every year. We simply cannot afford not to be doing this. I think when people talk about how people are going to react to this, obviously we're going to have a programme of working with our residents. We're going to be having a communications programme. We're going to be having an education programme. We are going to be issuing new recycling containers, and we will be helping our residents move towards this 3 weekly target. Currently, more than 1.5 million people in Wales are on 3 or 4 weekly bin collections. There is no reason why the new residents of Newport cannot also manage 3 weekly bin collections. 18 out of 22 local authorities in Wales are either on 3 weekly bin collections or they are consulting on it. It is the direction of travel. It is a requirement that we move to increased recycling. And when it comes to how people are going to manage, I see some fly tipping this week. I saw some fly tipping over in the Caerphilly direction. Somebody looked like they'd cleared a flat. I saw fly tipping in the Reen. I was litter picking in Bettis last week. I came across an old shower and some ceramic tiles. It is more to do with the character of the people doing it than the circumstances that they find themselves in. It is a despicable act. It is totally unnecessary. It is a criminal act. And when people say, oh, well, we can't put our stuff in the right bin, therefore we're going to do fly tipping, it's like you're condoning it.
Councillor
Do
Forsey,
not condone it.
your 3 minutes are up, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Right, Councillor Morris?
I'm quite astonished at what I just heard from the Cabinet member, to be honest. The problems that we face in our ward, none of what she said makes sense to what the actual cause of the problem is. But I'm not going to concentrate on the 3 weekly bin collection, just to wind up. I've not insulted anybody. I've not stood up. I understand the problems this council faces. I understand how we've got to this mess. We just think that what we're doing is going a little bit too far in hurting our people, the people that we represent. My point about food banks, I wasn't making fun of food banks at all. 2 words that should never be in the English language or should go together. It's unbelievable. What I was pointing out, the last Cabinet meeting, at 1 hour, 15 minutes into that Cabinet meeting, I was sat up here watching it. And Cabinet members were making a point about food banks, and what they were saying, if you want to get involved with food banks, or if you want to know about food banks, come to a Labour councillor. Because they seemed to think that that was the only people that understood it. And I don't need a lecture of anybody about food banks, what they do and how they help. They should not be in existence, but I don't need a lecture of anyone what they do. As far as the 8.5%, yes, you're talking small amounts of money. We understand that. But it is a choice. Those people that were talking about food banks, next time you go to the food bank helping out, say to those people, oh, by the way, I could have reduced your rates by a little bit more, but I chose not to, because it is a choice. This is not something forced. It's not a nice position that we're in, but it is a choice. The 8.5% rise is a choice. What we're asking is that we reconsider it to bring it down a little bit. And what makes me so sure that's possible? If there was an election next year, there is no way in a million years will we be putting rates up 8.5%. And I totally agree. Newport has the lowest rates in Wales. But that doesn't mean anything to somebody who is already what they're already paying. They don't understand that. They will just see theirs going up more than other people, and that's where they will come from. I'm moving the amendment, and I'm asking for a recorded vote with it, Mr. Presiding Member. Thank you for your time.
Support a recorded vote, Mr. Presiding Member. Need 5?
You got it. You've got to get 5 there. You haven't got 5, so it's not a recorded vote. Leader, you've got the right of the original motion now to speak. Speaking on the amendment.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and thank you, colleagues, for all of your contributions to the debate. And I think it's really clear this evening that if there's one point we all agree on, it's the difficulty of setting a balanced budget in the difficult financial context. In fact, unprecedented financial context. But I do want to pick up a few points that have been raised during this debate. And I think something I'd like to highlight, first of all, is that this is very much about choice. I agree, I totally agree with Councillor Howells and Councillor Morris. This is very much about choice. So let's consider the choices that the UK government have made. Because at every step along the way, they could have averted the crisis that we find ourselves in. But they are content to see citizens suffer.
Excuse me, Leader, can we stop having conversations over there, please? Okay, thank you. Leader?
While oil companies make tremendous profits, they're content for citizens to be left vulnerable and exposed, while the oligarchs just relish in their billions. On the amendment, I'd just like to reflect on Councillor Whitehead's point. Councillor Whitehead, I agree, there are really difficult decisions to be made. And we are here, we are elected, we do represent our communities. But there are 51 people in this chamber that have got a duty and a responsibility to take collective responsibility for decision making. And that is also why we're here. So on the subject of responsible decision making, we've already discussed the guidelines that we're required to follow with our financial strategies. We need to demonstrate that we are prudent, that our strategies are affordable, and that they are sustainable. And we need to take collective responsibility in doing that. Now, on the proposal that we have put before us, the amendment proposes that Cabinet take the budget back and consider what we might do in terms of a proposed £160,000 saving. It's a £320,000 saving. Let's be clear about that. It's over 2 years. It's also been proposed that we consider the use of reserves to cover this saving and a proposed reduction in council tax, although nobody wants to tell us what the proposed reduction in council tax should be. Well, let me tell you, because I can add up, that a proposal to reduce council tax by 1% would take £651,000 out of our revenue budget. A proposal to reduce council tax by 1% for a Band D property will take away 24 pence a week. What's the choice? Let's have a look at this. £651,000 Well, what should we do? Should we keep Oaklands open? Should we do that? Should we keep Spring Gardens open? Shall we protect the vulnerable for the collective cost of 24 pence extra a week? Or shall we take away those services? Well, I know what a Labour administration is proposing, and a Labour administration will always, always support the most vulnerable in our society. And for those reasons, I reject the amendment.
Thank you very much, Leader. Right, we vote for the amendment. All those for...
Point of order.
Yeah.
I want to invoke Standing Order 7.5.
Sorry?
I want to invoke Standing Order 7.5 for myself.
After the vote you want to speak, is it?
No,
On the
Standing Order 7.5. I'm sure the monitoring officer can explain it, or I'll read it out for you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'd also like to vote the same standing order, please, and have my vote recorded.
Okay.
That goes for me too, please.
Okay. Okay.
And me too, please.
Okay. Right. Okay. Well, all those for the amendment, please show. One, two. Okay. And against? Amendment's not carried, so it goes back to the original motion. Right, Leader?
Thank you. Thank you, Presiding Member. I reserve my right to speak at the end of the debate.
Right, okay. Right, we got the central motion now, obviously, is the budget proposals. Anyone want to speak on the budget proposals? Councillor Evans?
Thank you, Presiding Member. For as long as I can remember, the Cabinet and indeed the Labour group seem to have selected amnesia when it comes to funding. So let me put the record straight. Your Welsh Labour government have been responsible for funding councils since last century. They can allocate the funds they receive from Westminster as they see fit. They are perfectly entitled to squander millions on a failing airport, dodgy land deals, M4 relief consultations, 20-mile-an-hour zones, or indeed extra assembly members. Or they could choose to prioritise local government. I recently asked them how many efficiency savings they'd made over the past 5 years and staffing numbers. Their response was it would take too long to answer when it came to efficiency savings, and their staffing numbers have increased by almost 700. So perhaps you could go back to them and ask for additional funding. Of course, they also have tax-raising powers now, but have decided not to use them because we're in a cost-of-living crisis. And yet here you are, supporting an 8.5% council tax increase. You can dress it up all you like, just a few extra pounds a week, but the reality is much starker. I also noticed they now started quoting bands A to C, increased when band D has always been the common, normal stance. In 2013-14, an average band D in Newport was paying £855. Now it's going to be £1,380. Make no mistake, this is a real kick in the teeth for hard-working residents who will not only be paying significantly more, they'll also be receiving less services. Our neighbours, or your Labour neighbours in Torvine, are putting up council tax by less than 2%. How can they manage to do this when we can't? It's a rhetorical question. I'll get back to it. It's also important to note that over the last 5 years, you have written off debts of more than £6 million. Just think what extra money that would have bought. And let's not forget the £500,000 you're paying a Canadian corporation each year due to the vacant units in Friars Walk, a deal which you did in 2017. And finally, a reminder for many councillors here of a time when you were actually in opposition. I know it's only happened once in the last half century, but got a nice clip here. Anger, as the Tory Lib Dem coalition opposes Labour's proposal for a 0% council tax rise. 0%. And it goes on to say the local Labour team furious, absolutely furious that we have
Councillor Evans, can you wind? You've had your 3 minutes.
Just allow me just to finish. I'm almost there. Thank you, Presiding Member. You do have discretion to allow.
I know, but come on, there's a lot of debate now.
Look,
you're wasting your time now. Quickly, please.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm saying you were furious, and you've chosen to ignore the chance to help local people through tough economic times. And you were going to vote for no increase at all. And of course, at that time, in 2009, we had a Welsh Labour government in Cardiff Bay, and we also had a UK was Welsh government. So we've had these cost.
Councillor Evans, I think you've gone well over the 3 minutes now. Please sit down.
Can I just say that
no, we know what the price you're making now. There's other people who want to speak, please.
Can I just move a recorded vote be taken at the end of the debate?
Okay, if that's what you want to do. Yeah, you've got to get 5 people. Okay. Okay. Marriage made in heaven there, isn't it? Right, the next one we got now is Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I was hoping the Leader of the Opposition...
Point of order.
Oh.
Cabinet members are referring to you as Presiding Officer. You're the Presiding Member. It says it 81 times in Standing Orders. If you read Standing Orders, you wouldn't make that mistake.
Well, I'm not taking umbrage of that. I'm sure I've been called worse than that.
Sir Walter, thank you for pointing that out. So what I'm really going to get at there, but I'm glad you stopped me, but I'll carry on. And I hope that didn't kick into my 3 minutes. I was hoping the leader of the Conservatives would have stood up with a bit of humility today. And what he's done there, he's talked about leadership, about Welsh Government and leadership and what's going on there. I would ask people to look at the leadership of the UK Government. Look a bit inwards at yourselves. When Boris Johnson stepped down, this is about decision-making, which you mentioned about the Welsh Government decision-making. When Boris Johnson stepped down, after 23 ministers, junior ministers and government employees resigned within 48 hours, saying he could not work with him, leading the government, the Conservatives made a leadership decision. Not us, not anyone else, the Conservatives. Not the 60 million in the UK, the 154,000 members. That Liz Truss was the person to lead us out of these difficult times. In 45 days, she managed to bring the country down onto its knees. We were on the brink of a recession in 45 days by the person the Conservatives related to having the same values as them. She sacked the Chancellor for doing exactly what she asked him to do. She said she wouldn't implement every single tax rise that she spent the summer saying she wouldn't. She could have, and it's been mentioned before, she could have put a windfall tax on the energy companies, but she decided that we would have to pick up that bill. Even though in February 2023, Shell announced 32.2 billion profit, which was their highest profit figure in 115 years. She chose her previous employer, Shell, over the people of the UK and the residents of Newport. She forced mortgages to be doubled in the cost of living crisis when wages were not increased and the high rate of inflation. After that debacle, the Conservatives decided to put Rishi Sunak in charge, the man who broke the law in COVID to attend a party and was fined, whilst the rest of us didn't see our loved ones. Yes, we need to move on, but we'll never forget. Also, this is the man that in a two-horse race, the Conservative membership didn't want to back. What does that say? And since he's been in, he put his Chancellor...
Councillor Clark, your 3 minutes are up.
It should be 10 seconds. The head of the Magistrates' Treasury, who owed 5 million tax, and his State Secretary for Environment, who said workers need to work more. Look at yourselves.
Sorry,
Councillor...
Presiding Member, just a point of clarification. I thought we were debating about Newport and the council tax. So I'm not
Yeah,
quite
but
sure what
Councillor Clark was trying to allude there, obviously, was the point. But you raised the issue about other governments, really. So don't expect people not to come back on that.
Sorry, no, I
Yeah,
raised
look,
the fact that...
please sit down. I've made my decision. Okay, right, Councillor Corton.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I find it quite galling to hear the opposition over there talking about us giving our residents a kick in the teeth without even taking a modicum of responsibility for the part that they have played in the cuts that this city has had to bear over the last decade or so. Each and every one of the Tories in this chamber gave a mandate to the UK government to strip money from our city. They voted for a government that thinks taking money from poor areas and giving it to more affluent areas is a vote winner. They gave a mandate to a PM who blew tens of billions in less time than it takes for a lettuce to go bad, meaning thousands of households in Newport are now paying around £2,000 more per year on their mortgage. They gave a mandate to a PM who didn't see the issue of inflation coming down the line. And now today, we hear that food inflation has hit more than 17%, adding more than £800 per year to the average family's food bill. And then there's the punishing failed austerity agenda, which has stripped this council of millions over the years. Oh, and let's not forget the PM that we have that wrote off £4.8 billion to fraudsters. Talk about us. Hello. They've waved all of this through, leaving us as a council and the families that all of us represent in this city in an impossible position. Heating or eating, homelessness on the rise, poverty on the rise, and they campaigned for the government that let this happen. So while they sit there blustering and flapping, putting their party over the people of Newport, we will carry on with the job clearing up their mess. The mess of the Tory government in Westminster, making the difficult decisions that ensure those in our city who are the most vulnerable are taken care of. In this budget, we, the Labour Group, are continuing with our commitment to ensure our young people have the best chances and the best future. We are supporting and standing by our city centre businesses, and we are standing by our values when it comes to climate change. Turnips for tea might be good enough there.
Councillor Corton, you can wind up now, please.
Yes, I will be. But we, over here in the Labour Party, are more ambitious for our city. We're on the side of Newport, and we always will do our best for it.
Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Presiding Member, not officer. Make sure I get it right. Like many people on both sides of this chamber, actually, obviously I'm a new councillor. I certainly didn't expect to be in this position when I got elected in May. But as has been alluded to quite a few times already, it's Tory incompetence in government that has led to this situation where we've got rampant inflation, runaway interest rates, soaring energy prices, and a cost of living crisis that's hitting all of our residents to unprecedented levels. Now, this phrase, cost of living crisis, is just rolling off the tongue now. It's become just a phrase. This is what it means now. This is what it really means for people in our cities, people we represent. They need more support than they've ever needed before. That support is costing more than it's ever costed before, and there's less funding to supply it. I mean, to hear the Leader of the Opposition say about Welsh Government's funding, that's like blaming me for not being able to afford a 10-mansion house because I don't get paid enough. The money comes from Westminster. If the money isn't there in Cardiff, they can't give it to us. Comparisons in terms of percentages, it's so easy to pay with percentages, isn't it? Torvine are proposing to raise theirs by 2%. In real money, people who earn the same money as we do in Torvine, a few miles down the road, they're earning the same money, doing the same jobs. Bandy, they will be paying around about £200 a month more than Newport residents. All right, that's the reality. Forget the 2%. That's irrelevant. It's what they're paying. They are going to be paying £200 a month more than our residents. And I tell you what, Am I angry about this? Yeah, I'm really angry about it because I know where the blame lies. But I am absolutely proud of my Cabinet colleagues over here because, as been mentioned already, we've all lost sleep over this. We've all had sleepless nights. I'm not part of the decision-making process, thankfully, and I've lost sleep over it. So I dread to think what this lot have been through. But we've had debates, we've had arguments, and I am absolutely proud to the back teeth about the fact that we support the vulnerable people in Newport. We've supported Oaklands, Spring Gardens, social care, education, and we put those above bin collections. Thank God we did.
Thank you, Councillor Renz. Councillor Cox.
Thank you. First of all, as some other people have done, I would like to just acknowledge the incredible job, actually, that's been done by members of the Cabinet and by the officers of this Council in putting together the budget they have in face of the absolutely impossible financial position the Council was placed in. But what I want to really come back to this issue of responsibility, because it's absolutely clear that nobody in Newport, nobody on this council wanted this budget. Nobody wanted to see the cutbacks that have taken place. It's an absolute nonsense to try and blame this on the Welsh Government in Cardiff, because the Welsh Government in Cardiff actually came up with a better budget settlement than most of us hoped they could possibly do. And it's completely outside the financial resources of the Welsh Government to actually bail all Welsh councils out of this situation, because the overwhelming bulk of the money the Welsh Government spends comes from Westminster. I mean, the problem clearly lies at Westminster. That's where the decisions were made. And one thing I think that is really quite frightening about that is that it's not as if the government at Westminster was pushed into some financial corner itself. This was an absolutely deliberate decision, because this is what they are. They are people who do not believe in public services, they do not believe in public spending, they believe in a small state, that they believe in tax handouts to the rich. In fact, the government we've got in Westminster is run by extremists, and that's not my view. That is Michael Heseltine, leading figure in Margaret Thatcher's government, actually refused to vote Tory in the 2019 election because he said the Tory party is infected with the virus of extremism. John Major described the Tory party as being run by fanatics. That Ken Clarke, a highly respected member of the Thatcher government, actually described the people who are now running the Tory party as headbangers. And so if anybody from the Conservative group on this council has any concern about this budget, they need to go to those people, the people who are running their party, and tell them what their policies are doing to the people of Newport.
Councillor Screen.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Just say I've been here before, 1986. I was on the council, and it was hard times, really hard. And that was a result of the Thatcherite attack on local government, education and the health service. But now things are even worse than they were in 1986. And again, it's a result of this Tory government in Westminster. We've had 12 years of austerity. We've had the pandemic, which was badly managed. Waste of public money. We've got a war in Europe. We're finally getting to the end of Brexit. And this Tory government is doing nothing to help ordinary working people. They will help the wealthy. And if you look at the figures, the richer got richer over the last 12 years. The poorer got poorer. We got more food banks. The 6th richest nation in the world. And that is a disgrace, because it is normalised now. It is becoming normalised, our food banks. Disgraceful. The Welsh Government has been defunded by about £3 billion from the Westminster government. So when you talk about the Welsh government, they got the money to do this, they got the money to do that. They haven't, because they're relying on the UK government, which has defunded them. So it all goes back to this awful government that we have in Westminster. So you want to start blaming the Welsh government, you first ought to look at your own house and put that in order. Thank you.
Councillor Forsey.
Thank you very much, Presiding Member. I just wanted to run through some of the positive reasons for the 3 weekly bin collections. First of all, the annual savings, £320,000 a year, with less vehicles and less staff. The fines of £500,000 a year that I mentioned earlier. But I wanted to just reflect a bit on the environment. We've declared a climate emergency and an ecological emergency. And if this means anything, we cannot continue producing large amounts of waste and sending it to landfill or the incinerator. We have to reduce, reuse and recycle and learn to live in an environmentally sustainable way. 30% of what is in our bins can be recycled. 25% of that is food that can go in the food recycling container. The good thing about food recycling is that it makes people more aware of their waste. So whether it's your gone-off lettuces or your gone-off turnips, you've got somewhere to put them. But I just wanted to finish with saying I really cannot understand why the councillor for the Green Party wants to leave the lights on, and whether or not anybody is there, and whether the councillor for the Green Party doesn't want to improve recycling rates. So perhaps she's not really in the Green Party. She seemed to be more aligned to the Blue Party or the Yellow Party. Thank you.
Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you very much, Mr. Presiding Officer, Mr. Speaker. Who's it? Oh, Mr. Presiding Member. So many titles for one so great.
Thank you for that, yeah.
Yes. As I said before to you when you were a Cabinet Member, you know, small in stature, but great in the job. Don't forget that.
I don't know what you're after.
Yes.
I really don't.
So the proposed 8.5 increase in council tax, in my opinion, is obscene. Residents throughout the city have been asked to pay more whilst receiving less. And Newport's Labour have made these budget cuts. They've made cuts to our bin collections, and they're turning off our street lights, and they're making sweeping cuts to other council services. Make no mistake, this is Newport Labour's budget, a budget of cuts put together by a Labour cabinet and implemented by a Labour-controlled council. The leader made great play here when she was on her debate about the council tax, about public consultation and how they had listened. However, the public consultation had a 0.9% participation rate. And the ones who took part in the bus survey, 19% of them didn't even live in Newport or didn't give an address in Newport. One thing was clear from those who did take part in the consultation: they didn't want the refuse collection reduced. Yet Newport Labour have ignored this. Newport Labour only hear what they want to hear, and they, Newport Labour, decided to ignore these concerns and press ahead with these reductions in refuse collection. This is your budget, Newport Labour's budget, a budget that ignores residents and delivers the things that Newport Labour wish to deliver, a party of self-interest in governing Newport. You need to go back and look at this budget again. You have enforced an obscene council tax hike on the city, even though you continually complain about the cost of living, yet you are happy for residents to cough up and in some cases to struggle. You complain you don't have enough money. Well, you need to look no further than your pals down there in the Assembly. Millions wasted on an airport. Millions wasted on 20-mile-an-hour speed zones. A feasibility study into an M4 relief road that we never actually got. And the worst one of the lot, in my opinion, extra Assembly members and jobs for their flunkies at a cost of millions. And at the same time, the First Minister states that he can't afford to pay nurses and teachers. Yet he can create jobs for his mates down there in Cardiff Bay. This Newport Labour budget is bad for Newport, but it's what we've come to expect from Newport Labour.
Oh. Councillor Routley.
Mr. Presiding Member, I'm glad I got the title right. And you are a great guy, so, you know, that's good. Spring Gardens.
Beware of Greeks, they say, don't they?
Yes, Spring Gardens. You know, I was actually proud of this council in 2015 when it became a dementia-friendly city, and all the hoo-ha that went with that, and everybody were actually very buoyant about the step that we had taken in 2015. We even had, I don't know if you know, but we had a dementia champion then. But fast forward to the service that we're about to undertake if you support the current budget in its shape or form. At the moment, Spring Gardens facilitate 33 bedrooms which are utilised on short-term respite care. Nursing provision isn't provided there. Dementia in Newport is at over 2,000 citizens are suffering from dementia. And yes, we are struggling to provide 33 places as a city council. So what do? We're a dementia-friendly city, and we're about to cut their budget by £300,000. What that is going to do is that's actually going to condemn the service going forward to failure. But not only are we cutting it by £300,000, just to make it look good, the smoke and mirror tricks comes in, and sleight of political hand, we're taking £300,000 off you, but for this year only, we're going to give you £200,000 back. My God, I wouldn't buy a second-hand car off us on those rates. That's well dodgy, in my opinion. What we need to do is, I suppose, where's the dementia champion gone? That's one of the key. You used to be a dementia champion. You're no longer there anymore. You're gone. Forget it. You weren't that good, apparently. But
don't be so.
There's no dementia champion.
Excuse me. There's no need to act like that towards another member. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Providing Member.
And your time's up at the same time, so I suggest you sit down. That would be easiest.
Thank you.
Time's up. Time's up, Councillor.
That's okay.
Sit down, please. Thank you. Sit down. Councillor Radley, sit down. Thank you very much. Right. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Firstly, Presiding Member, I'd like to thank everyone who took part in the consultation. And I've worked tirelessly under unprecedented challenges to help meet our legal obligations in balancing this budget tonight. But I'm disappointed. As a bit of a film fan, I came here expecting to see the Magnificent Seven in opposition chairs, but what I've actually got is the usual suspects. No alternative budget. No alternative budget. But they're joined, obviously, by their new friends this evening. I'm disappointed my colleagues in the opposition appear oblivious to the challenges faced by the local authorities trying to reach budget settlement. Many of their own Tory councils won't be able to balance the books, and I genuinely feel for them because the people who elected them depend on public services. And for once, we really are in this all together. They'll be aware that they have legal obligations to balance the books, and all local authorities have been placed in this unprecedented position because of the catastrophic failures of their government in Westminster. After over a decade of austerity that has stolen almost £100 million from our budgets in Newport, and an austerity policy that promised recovery and growth, we find ourselves here with austerity plus tonight. The government in Westminster failed to control inflation. It failed to control our out-of-food prices. We saw fuel prices out of control at the petrol tanks, and then they failed to control the profits of our energy suppliers, meaning now individual homes, businesses and local authorities find themselves here once more having to make these difficult decisions. Yes, council tax rises will place pressure on families, but they also save services. And we've listened to our residents and we are protecting services that matter to them. This council tax rise protects our most vulnerable, our dementia services as Dementia Champion for Newport. There you go. And they will help our mental health services as well. And we have protected those services that you talk about. In those decisions, you see the difference between the Conservatives on one side of the House and us on this side. We have tried and succeeded in balancing the books while continuing to invest in this city. But this is an opposition looking for allies in the corridors, looking at how to undermine the budget, and that's because they want local authorities to fail and they want Newport to fail. They are desperate to divert attention from the real problems. It's not local authorities, it's not the Senate, it's them. They push local authorities off the cliff so they can stand at the bottom and blame us for our injuries. That's the reality. That's what they did through austerity, and that's what they're trying to do now. Their responses and solutions are never realistic. You never see an alternative budget, and they question the process. And the reality is they create the problems and we solve them. They create the food banks and we support them. They create the budget catastrophes and we balance the books. Ask yourselves what they would have done in the same position. Have any of them written to the Cabinet members asking or suggesting solutions? No, they wait here so they can play their games. It's mistake after mistake. This is about balancing budgets, and we are here tonight facing a legal obligation to support the budget. I wish you'd support it.
Listen. Councillor Routley, you're not my deputy. I don't want you helping me out. I can do it. Please be quiet, right? Right. Lost my track. Councillor Reeks, please.
Okay. Thank you, Presiding Member. Just like to say the budget proposed by this Council's Cabinet really, in my opinion, falls short of listening to the people, as the Council claims it's been doing throughout this whole budget process. From the initial press releases, the social media tweets and everything else that went on, and even YouTube videos warning of a £33 million shortfall, which quickly became apparent that wasn't actually going to be the case, the Council caused distress and anxiety to scores of families using vital social services, and now continue to do so with the budget proposals, with a lack of concern about the safety and well-being for the residents of Newport. Let's look at the reasons. Switching off all the streetlights after midnight, making night workers and the people enjoying the Purple Flag city centre venues feel more vulnerable in the early hours. Reducing the services and availability of the community wardens that provide a vital safety line to many residents. And increasing the chances of fly tipping by moving to 3 weekly bin collections. As one resident pointed out to me last week, our streets are already dirty and littered, and that's even with fortnightly connections. So goodness knows what they'll look like if we go to 3 weekly bin collections. I can't support the Council in this council tax rise, but what I do is I urge the Cabinet to revisit their proposals and actually listen to what the residents need to restore their faith and trust in the people that they entrust their city to, i.e. the 51 councillors in this room. Thank you, Presiding Member.
I'm siding with the amendment there, a bit confusing then for me. Councillor James.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I am not going to engage in the tit-for-tat either between UK and Welsh governments or that directed at me. What I will say, though, is I'm grateful for Cabinet's improved offer. I don't feel, however, that it's gone far enough. Poorest and most vulnerable residents are still shouldering the burden of this budget. The Council hasn't adequately considered the impact of this on residents with protected characteristics, and you don't need to take my word for that. In their report to Cabinet, the Fairness Commission said that the public were not provided with enough information to gauge the impact of their proposals. They went further, stating that the Council is not meeting its own basic requirements in terms of the adequate completion of fairness and equality impact assessments and indeed its obligations under the Equality Act. We've been told that we are out of choices, that there are simply no options left, and I believe that to be untrue. Newport Talbot, a council led by a Rainbow Coalition, which includes the Green Councillor, have put forward a budget with no service cuts, no redundancies, and a 4.5% increase in council tax. They're using reserves. Last year it was reported ours were at more than 130 million. That's our rainy day fund. It's tipping down out there. But the administration say we can't use it to repair the roof because they've put too many rings around it. You may think that because there is a legal requirement on councils to have a balanced budget, that we need to vote this budget through. But that isn't the whole truth. Voting this budget down would mean the administration will have to work harder to bring a budget that all the parties can agree on, and there is time to do that and precedent for it too. So we know that this budget will harm our most vulnerable, and we know that better is possible. We know that we don't have to accept it, and therefore this is a choice. This budget is not the fault of Labour backbenchers, but I do wonder if they had this budget in mind when last year they told residents they were on your side, by your side. Whatever happens today, I know that when I'm next on the doorstep, I'm going to be able to look my residents in the eye. Whether or not the rest of the members of the room will be able to do the same is entirely on them. At this point, I was going to move for a recorded vote, just to clarify why I stood up when it was moved earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Petroni.
Thank you, Chair. All we just heard then was a Green councillor explaining why she voted against a Green Party manifesto policy. That has been since the Green Party has existed, so there's no way out of that one. Presiding member, what we've just heard from the opposition, and I've been in opposition in Monmouthshire, is not a credible alternative. We have the Howells credit card, which all the opposition members want to borrow off. And now our head of finance is a wise person. And I refer to the strategy we just voted for before this debate. And I'm quoting, as the capacity to internally borrow reduces, as reserves are utilised as intended, the need for external borrowing increases. Increases. So if we take more reserves from Councillor Howell's amendment, which you all voted for, we'll have to borrow more, pay interest more, cut more services down next year, the year after, and if we reduce the council tax from 8.5, that reduces the intake next year and next year because of the compounding effect. And I heard zero from them about how we were going to pay for that. In fact, Councillor Howard said during his motion that he wasn't actually committed to using the reserves. He said, you could use 7 million, but I'm not proposing that. What kind of opposition is that? He couldn't even commit to his own amendment, to his own finances. That's not a credible alternative. So it is about choices. More borrowing, more debt, bankruptcy.
Point of clarification, Mr. Provider.
Sorry, what is it?
That wasn't what I said.
It was. Actually,
it wasn't. I said I'm not advocating a full 0% increase. I'm advocating using 2 million of reserves to fund a 5.68% increase, which I've discussed in detail with a Section 151 officer. It's fully costed. Thank you.
Right. Sit down.
Yeah, so he just confirmed he wants to borrow more, presiding member. He wants to lay more debt on council taxpayers, and then they'll have to find it next year and the year after. The Conservatives used to believe in not borrowing more, but now they've completely changed their minds. So it is about choices. Adults in the room making the tough choices, those who can't face up to them.
Councillor Lacey.
Thank you, presiding member. You sit there arguing against the budget, yet in the last few months when the consultation budget process has been taking place, not one member of the opposition has contacted me about the savings against my portfolio, yet you're quite happy to grab the headlines on lights and all other things. In fact, I don't believe one of my cabinet colleagues has been contacted by anybody of the opposition for any constructive or considered discussion. You simply don't care. You've come today with quite a frankly pathetic attempt of an amendment, not properly costed, just here to grab the headlines. You had every opportunity to work with us for our residents, and you chose not to take it.
Councillor Davis, you're going to speak now? You have the right to speak.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Funding to local authorities has been severely impacted due to the knock-on effects of Brexit.
Mr. Presiding Officer, with due respect, I did indicate I wanted to speak.
I didn't see it before the.
Well, then
the
I'm
second
indicating no, and I'd like to speak, please.
I'm happy to sit down.
You happy to do that, Councillor Davis? All right. I don't need you two all the time. Will you shut up, or we'll split you up, or put one over there and one over there. Right, Councillor Hearing, please. Will you shut up? Enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer.
I'm glad this has been recorded.
It's been an interesting evening. And I wonder what Alice in Wonderland world they live in over there. I wouldn't be crass enough to suggest which one of them should take which role, but they're burying their heads in a very deep hole. We've heard talk of 12 years of austerity imposed by this Conservative government. It wasn't austerity at all. It was imposing poverty on the United Kingdom. Every last one of us has suffered under this government, but some far more than others. If they ever listened, they talk about all this money they've got in the Welsh Assembly government. Joel Barnett, when he constructed the Barnett formula, on the back of a fag packet, his words, not mine, said it was totally unfair and he only expected it to be a quick fix for 1 year. Here we are, some 20-odd years down the line, and we're still bound by this very unfortunate, very unfair policy. They say we've got lots of money in Wales. I hope they're true. The last time I talked on this subject, it seemed to get so far under one member of the opposition's skin that he had to rant and scream at us and use a word that one of my colleagues found very unpleasant, but I'll use the word plundered Wales this evening rather than the one I used last time, which Alexander Cordell thought was a very fair word. We have heard nothing but niff-naff and trivia from them. We've had no reasonable alternative proposals given to us, and if you think that giving 2 sentences can be an alternative budget, you're very much wrong, because the work that's gone in by my colleagues over here over the last 3 months is absolutely phenomenal. And if they think they can find a question, we Labour councillors haven't already asked, where can we possibly head off the cuts? And as a socialist group, we stand behind the basic principle: we will protect social services and we will protect education as much as we possibly can. Unfortunately, we can't increase the monies we put into these services, which we certainly should be doing. And they made the assumption about raising taxation in Wales, and if they took the opportunity to listen to Mark Drayford when he explained why there was no...
Councillor Hearing, you're coming up to your 3 minutes.
There was no point whatsoever, as we do not have the economic base to sustain it. Thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, then.
So just a point of clarification. I'm fascinated because did I read right that you said that you haven't got tax-raising powers, or you've got tax-raising powers, but it's no point in using them because... I'm just interested to see what he was trying to say.
Well, if you're interested, you can speak to him after about it. Right. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Funding to local authorities has been severely impacted due to the knock-on effects of Brexit that has left us with an economy that's been reduced by 5.5%, and with new border controls disrupting commerce and the supply of labour, a consequence of a referendum predicated on lies and misinformation. The recent tomato crisis is a case in point. And who actually wants to trade with us when it's easier to transfer goods through an open border? And who do we blame? It's the Tories in London. Additionally,
Will you stop it, you two? You're like those ones in the Muppets, you know, the ones in the I can't remember their names, but, you know, stop it. Just stop it, please. You're not interrupted.
Can I have my time extended, given it's been interrupted by the opposition? Thank you. Additionally, the global pandemic has an impact, but this was inherently made worse in the UK by the £6 billion spent on useless PPE, contracts given to Tory mates and chums, and again, the Tories to blame. And yes, the impact of the war in Ukraine and consequent rising fuel costs are a massive issue, but it's being appallingly managed. We have an uncaring and contemptuous Tory government who failed to agree a further windfall tax to protect residents from profiteering fuel companies. This is absolutely obscene as we see families struggling to pay their bills. And whose fault? Again, it's the Tories. A mini-budget that proposed tax cuts for the rich and crashed the economy with consequent mortgage rises that homeowners have had to stomach. Tory ineptitude, again, to blame. And then an autumn budget made against a backdrop of financial mess created by a Tory government that lurches from one scandal to the next. The Tories again to blame. Devastatingly, we know that funding will not improve next year. And then to balance the books, we are told that the Tories are bringing back to us the politics of austerity that are going to be introduced direct cuts made to our public services. And please take note, the Tory policy of austerity, again, completely coming our way. This makes an argument to dip into our reserves incredibly short-sighted, with a risk of destabilisation, making it difficult to balance the books in going forward. Reserves spent to reduce or minimise service savings will just mean a delay of decision and lead to an inability to deliver transformational and improved service delivery. Any reduction in our reserves would ultimately need to be replaced. Some English local authorities have been forced down this pathway and now profoundly in debt, unable to balance their budgets and make plans for their residents' lives. None of this is easy. We've all had sleepless nights, and there's been constant review and scrutiny to try and reduce the impact of what we're having to do. But the Welsh Government, with a higher than expected settlement, has enabled us to reject some of our more difficult proposals and, importantly, allocate an extra £2.8 million to support our schools. It's in our schools where we know that investment will pay dividends, promoting equality of opportunity and access to learning for all our children. We've supported the most vulnerable and protected social services. We do care and we do listen. But finally, I wanted to speak on the point that the Green member made in relation to the Fairness Commission. It's a response that we clearly studied and scrutinised, but what we appreciated and understood is that they were commenting on a budget that was predicated and set following dissemination of funding from the Tory government. How can you be fair? How can a budget be fair when it's actually set on a backdrop of funding cuts and raised inflation? The Fairness Commission, in truth, actually failed in some points to consider some of the support mechanisms we actually have in place in local authority. A really good example, for example, is our council tax reduction scheme, which we all voted on, unanimously voted on in last full council. A scheme that ensures that our most vulnerable, despite an increase in council tax, will get the benefit and support that's needed. Thank you. I've finished.
Right, thanks. We got Councillor Morris then, and I think the leader then wants to wind up then. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. Just to answer Councillor Lacey's point, when you say that we haven't got involved, we haven't asked questions, we haven't invented what we've come up with. We're against the 3 weekly bin collection and we're against the 8.5%, not because we as three individuals don't like it. It's through talking to our residents. All three of us came to the same conclusion because we're in and about our ward all the time. We're working councillors. We didn't make it up. We haven't dreamt it up. We haven't consulted. People came to us and they've collared us, and we're doing what we should do as decent councillors, representing the views of the people we represent.
Presiding Member, can I respond, please?
No. I think the leader. No, I think you've already spoken. Leader, come on, don't go back and forth. Leader.
Thank you, Presiding Member. And in spite of all the hot air, it's freezing in here tonight. So
I've just spoken to the Chief Exec. We're all having hot toddy next time and blankets.
Thank you for that. And first of all, I'd really like to thank all colleagues who've engaged in the debate, because whether you agree or disagree with the proposals, I thank you all for stepping up and speaking out on behalf of the citizens of Newport this evening. There are a number of points that I would like to pick up on, however. Firstly, This is Newport City Council's budget. This budget is ours, all of us. Whether you like it or not, it's ours. I want to pick up on the point about the openness and transparency that we've demonstrated throughout this process. One opposition member referenced a YouTube video causing concern because we were open and honest about the £33 million gap that we were facing. That's not about scaremongering, that's about reality. That is about telling the truth to our residents, and we will continue to do that. We've heard reference to different governments here today. I'd just like to point out that in Wales, we've got something very precious indeed, and that's the social partnership, where government works closely with the trade unions and the workforce to avoid conflict and confrontation. That's a special arrangement, and it is the type of arrangement you would expect to see from the Labour Party, who are the party of the workers, who work hand in hand with their trade union sisters and brothers. Now, turning to focus, back here in Newport, there are some things that I really would like to highlight. Because in a lot of the consultation responses and a lot of the discussion that I've had on the doorstep, one of the things that really stands out for me is that citizens are saying to me, well, I only have the bin collection, that's the only thing I have, so why do I have to pay my council tax? Well, actually, this local authority, like every other local authority in the UK, provides services to its citizens from the cradle to the grave. From our registration services, for births, deaths, keeping people safe, ensuring that our retail outlets are safe, the amazing work our trading standards do, the work that they do into environmental health does in terms of protection when it comes to our food outlets, the work that they do in terms of housing standards, keeping people safe, the work that we all do with regard to our roads, our schools, our libraries, community centres, parks, cemeteries. I could go on. We provide over 800 services to the citizens of Newport. People pay for far, far more than just a bin collection. And on that point, yes, we take collective responsibility, and in a civilised society we come together and we fund collectively those services that people need the most, including those services that the most vulnerable need. That's what we'll continue to try to do here in Newport. And within that, we will continue to provide strong, steady, responsible local government, delivering a fairer, greener Newport for our citizens. I commend this budget to the Chamber. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Leader. Would all councillors now please cast their votes for? And I think it's going to be a recorded vote, so the names are Alan Morris. You're voting for or against? You asked for a recorded vote. Sorry? Well, I can only go on what they're here. All right, what can I look, look, that's the list I've been given. What can I, I can't do much about it, can I? I'll have to do it.
Can I just try and be helpful for one second?
Sorry?
There were a little bit of confusion. There was one individual recorded votes that certain members wanted to be recording their support for the amendment. Right. Recorded vote. Yeah. The one which actually went through was recorded vote for everybody in here on the main motion.
That's what I'm aware of.
Yeah, so just start with it alphabetically from the...
Well, it's a recorded vote, and all I can do is that's the list that I've been given. I can't do... What can I
suggest that you use the list you've been given so we can move this forward, please, Presiding Member?
Right, Alan Morris. Sorry, against. Dave Mayer. Obviously is...
For.
Councillor Aluami. Matthew Evans? Malcolm Linton? Councillor Fairweather? Councillor Routley? Is the Mayor? I think he's here.
Against.
Against, right. Councillor Watkins? Councillor Mogford? Councillor Thomas? Councillor Harvey? Deb Harvey? Councillor the Leader?
4.
Councillor Whitehead?
Against.
Councillor Deb Davis?
4.
Councillor Mark Spencer?
4.
Councillor Townsend? Councillor Cleverly? Councillor Marshall?
4.
Councillor Jordan? Councillor Lacey? Councillor Hurahan? Councillor Hughes? Councillor Clark? Councillor Forsey?
4.
Councillor Hurahan? Councillor Jones? Councillor Horton? Councillor Sterry? Councillor Howells? Councillor Peterson?
Against.
Councillor Jewett? Councillor Westhead? Councillor Cox? Councillor Howells?
4.
Councillor Perkins? Councillor Barrett-Tronley? Councillor Pym? Matthew Pym? Councillor Bright? Councillor Screen? Councillor Reynolds? Councillor Corton? Councillor Harvey?
4.
Councillor Alex Pym? Councillor Adam? Councillor Jenkins? Councillor Reeks? Councillor Harris? He's voted, did he? Yeah. He's gone. Okay. Councillor Bev Davis? Councillor Lauren James? Right, can you count them up, please, quickly? I'm sorry about all that, but it should have been in alphabetical order, but all I had was the list that was in there. Okay, that's like I had to do it that way, and so we'll learn by that one. Okay. You really shouldn't be doing it. What is it?
Carried 34 for and 15 against.
Right, the result is 34 for and 15 against. Okay? So the motion is carried. Right. We move on to item 7 now. Having fun tonight, aren't we? Right. Leader, would you like to... National Domestic, Non-Domestic Retail, Leisure and Hospitality Relief Scheme.
Thank you, Presiding Member. So the next item on our agenda deals with the Welsh Government's rate relief scheme for 23-24. It will apply to all retail, hospitality and leisure businesses across the city which meet their qualifying criteria set out in the report and give a 75% rate reduction. It follows on from similar relief schemes which have been operating since 2020-21. As a council, we're asked to agree to adopt the Welsh Government's retail, leisure and hospitality rate relief scheme for 23-24 by making the appropriate determinations and decision. As the recommendations suggest, this is a procedural report and required as, whilst this is a Welsh Government scheme, it is being implemented by local authorities using their own discretionary powers under Section 47 of the Local Government Finance Act 1988. The use of this discretion is one for full council to consider and exercise, and I'm sure that everybody here realises the valuable benefit this brings to those qualifying businesses. The scheme is fully funded by Welsh Government and will enable those businesses that are in the retail, leisure or hospitality sector to benefit from 75% reduced business rates in 23-24. The scheme covers all businesses that occupy business premises operating in those sectors. Once adopted, the discretionary power will be exercised by the Head of Finance under delegated powers. The formal determination is shown within the report. Now, the relief will operate in a similar way to previous schemes, and businesses will be required to apply for the rate relief. The same application for those businesses operating in the city centre will also be used to allow them to access the council's own local scheme, and this provides 25% rate relief. It will be awarded automatically at the same time as the Welsh Government's award. To be absolutely clear, what that means is for eligible businesses operating within the city centre area, they will be in receipt of 100% rate relief over the next financial year. This is a Labour administration supporting business in Newport. I therefore urge all businesses in the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors who think that they may qualify to make their application for this valuable benefit, especially those in the city centre who will be eligible for the council's own scheme. All our colleagues in the chamber, I'm sure, will look to support this and agree to adopt the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Is there a seconder?
Move to second.
Thank you. Are there any comments on this report? Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Welsh Government have worked incredibly hard to support local government, our schools, our NHS, and importantly in supporting our local businesses. And this was most certainly recognised in the depths of the recent pandemic. But 75% in tax relief will make a massive difference in these difficult times when we have a Tory government who refuse to give businesses ongoing support with their fuel bills. This is a Tory government of tax hikes who have deliberately displayed a lack of investment in Wales. We were again overlooked with the recent levelling up funding, and we're yet to see support for our semiconductor industry with no funding and no strategy. And in spite of this, Newport is recognised as a rapidly developing, economically viable city, attracting businesses to settle within our locality. This has been achieved through Welsh Government support, Cardiff Capital Region funding, but it's being led by Newport City Council with our vision and our determination. We are seeing Labour delivering. So this is an additional 20 on the top of the 25% tax relief that we're already providing a local authority. I certainly welcome the support this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Just to support this, clearly, over the whole of Newport, we have got businesses who should take advantage of this. You know, we want to support them. We want to see the sustainability of people doing well and thriving in Newport. But I'm particularly pleased to be able to support it, as my ward is actually the town centre itself. So, very grateful for this. I think it shows our commitment, Welsh Government's commitment, to carrying things forward after the really tough 3 years that we've had. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Thank you, Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I can't see anybody else who wants to... Oh, sorry, Councillor Evans.
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. Because we will be supporting this, I'm quite surprised to hear your mention of a failed bid for funding, but we are fully supportive of this, and just surprised to hear some of the comments about UK government on this particular item, which again is devolved.
Right. Okay, so we cast the votes now then. Okay, 4. I think that's unanimous. I think everybody agrees there. Okay, so that's all been agreed then, and we move on to item 8. Leader, the Gwent Wellbeing Plan 2023 to 2028.
Thank you very much, Presiding Member. Well, I'm absolutely delighted to stand here before you today to introduce this particular item. So the next report presented is to provide members with an update on the development of the Gwent Wellbeing Plan 2023 to 28, and for us to approve the plan as one of the statutory members of the Gwent Public Services Board. Now, members will be aware that there is a statutory requirement within the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act for public service bodies to produce a wellbeing plan setting objectives on how it will improve the economic, social, environmental and cultural well-being of its area by contributing to the achievement of the 7 national wellbeing goals. The Gwent Public Services Board held its first meeting in October 2021, after it was agreed for each of the 5 local PSBs, including one Newport, to merge to form a Gwent PSB, thus strengthening the partnership arrangements across the region. Therefore, the Wellbeing Plan is based upon needs assessments from across Gwent, including the 6 local areas of Newport. As chair of the One Newport Partnership, which becomes a local delivery group under this plan, we will be working closely with all partners to deliver the objectives of the final plan, both on a regional and local footprint, and have started to develop a local delivery plan. Now, considering the Gwent Wellbeing Plan, the analysis of the needs assessment highlighted key themes that our residents wanted us to prioritise. And these themes formed the basis of a draft plan.
Councillor Oakley, do you mind sitting down, please?
No, just excuse me, I am going back now.
Right, okay. Just wait for people. Okay, Leader, I don't know what's going on.
Can I propose that we adjourn for 5 minutes, please?
Yes, okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, okay. Right, okay then. Right, can we vote on this item? Let me just get my paper. Right, will all councillors for? That's carried then. I think in light of what's happened now, I think it's been suggested that we suspend council now this evening, and then we'll put these items then onto the next council meeting. Is everybody happy with that? Okay. Thank you very much indeed, everybody.